the Chi-Town experience on the flight. Let me go tune in to Keek on the mic. He gon' make sure we get our news and highlights. When you get on YouTube, you better hit the like.
The Chicago Bears have a hidden agenda that can actually help them find their next head coach. Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to get all Bears content right here on the podcast. Bears fans, before I go any further with today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, and that is BetUS. As always, Bears fans, you guys can head over to betus.com and use promo code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000, and also get 125% second and third deposits as well. Bears fans, as we all know, the Chicago Bears have another game against the hated rival Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field on Sunday, which will be the last game of the season. If you guys have any confidence, and currently the Bears are a 10-point underdog against the Green Bay Packers, but you have any confidence to maybe go waste some more money on the Chicago Bears, you guys can head over to betus.com and use promo code YouTube150 to make that bet today. All right, Bears fans, once again, we are here to talk a little bit more about the Chicago Bears head coaching search, and I feel like you guys are going to enjoy today's episode of Keek on the Mic. I feel like it's going to be a really good conversation. I feel like plenty of your names are lining up to be the next Chicago Bears head coach, and rightfully so. That's not really surprising. Despite the Chicago Bears' terrible record, they're sitting at 4-12, and they're most likely going to lose to the Green Bay Packers once again on Sunday, which will leave their season-ending record to be at 4-13. But despite that very disappointing record, when you look at the Chicago Bears currently, they still have a very talented young quarterback in Caleb Williams, which most of us Chicago Bears fans, including myself, feel that the Bears finally got the quarterback position right, that Caleb Williams can be the franchise quarterback long-term for the Chicago Bears. And, you know, you look at the Chicago Bears defense, they definitely have some pieces there as well. Maybe if you can able to retool the offensive line. I know there's not a lot of hope there because the Bears have struggled to do that. And if you can finally get the right head coaching right from top to bottom, we're not just talking about the head coach, but head coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, maybe finally, the Chicago Bears can get back to their winning ways and hopefully make the playoffs as soon as next season. But once again, there's been a lot of coaches lining up and showing their interest in to be the next Chicago Bears head coach. That includes Ben Johnson, Pete Carroll, Brian Flores. A lot of different coaches are eager to just hear an interview for the job, probably due to the fact because we have a young talent quarterback in Caleb Williams. But here is the interesting part here. There's been a lot of Bears fans I'm just asking questions about the future of interim head coach Thomas Brown. And obviously these last 5 games were like an audition for Thomas Brown. I want to say this first and foremost on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. I do not feel that Thomas Brown is a failure. He was thrown into the fire. Obviously, the Chicago Bears organization was dysfunctional, and this was going to be a tough task for him to accomplish. Of course, I was rooting for Thomas Brown to succeed and maybe be the long-term head coach of the Chicago Bears, but that wasn't the case for him. And I'm not saying that he was always perfect, but I'm not saying he was the sole reason of the failure. He's currently sitting at 0-4 and is most likely going to end his interim head coaching with the Chicago Bears. I'm at 0-5 once they possibly lose to the Green Bay Packers on Sundays. But here is the thing that's interesting now about the situation that Thomas Brown and that Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and the Bears organization is actually in. Because now, once you formally interview Thomas Brown, which I think he still will get a formal interview for the Bears head coaching job, do I think he's actually going to land that position? No, absolutely not. But I feel like when you do interview and talk to Thomas Brown, you can actually have those conversations with him about what state he actually thinks the Chicago Bears are in. Let's not forget that Thomas Brown has been with the Chicago Bears since last January. So he was with Matt Eberflus. He's seen what Shane Waldron was doing. He's seen everything that has been going on from that moment to this point with him being the interim head coach. So he may have some opinions, and that's something that is actually interesting because Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune actually revealed this on a segment of 670 to Score, just basically talking about how Thomas Brown can be used as almost a hidden agenda for the Chicago Bears to really nail their next head coaching hire. So Bears fans, What I'm going to do right now is share that clip of Brad Biggs on 670 The Score talking about Thomas Brown and his chances of actually being the next Chicago Bears head coach, and how Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren can actually use Thomas Brown's input to hopefully nail the next head coaching hire for the Chicago Bears. So check this out, Bears fans.
Brad, I wanted to just also quickly ask you about, Thomas Brown getting a lot of questions about his future, and, do you see him getting a look and by the Bears, a real serious consideration for this job at this point? Obviously, he's handled a lot of this, unfortunately, a pretty unfortunate situation for him to be thrown into.
Yeah, I think I would guess he'll receive an interview. Mm-hmm. What I call it a serious interview. If they're going to interview him, I hope it's a serious interview. Do I believe he has a serious chance at the job? No, I do not.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's almost customary for the interim guy to get an opportunity to sit down and interview for the job when it's complete, right? And I think that's an opportunity for Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, and if George is in the room or whoever else, to maybe hear everything that Thomas has to say about what he experienced since he was hired, last January. Hey, here's what I saw in the building. If you want to know what I think about these issues, here it is. And he's a pretty direct guy. He's probably already shared some of that with them, but yeah, I would imagine he gets an interview. I would hope that if they're going to do it, that it's a real interview and all parties are listening and paying full attention. Do I think he's got a shot at it? No, I don't.
So once again, Bears fans, this is really good stuff by Brad Biggs, a guy that has a lot of intel inside Hallis Hall and inside that locker room. And once again, we said it already on today's episode of Keek on the Mic. Thomas Brown cannot fix the Chicago Bears. He has already proven that, right? He's in that 0-4, and obviously, it was too much of a task for him. This team is just a lost cause this season, right? They've just been terrible all year. But what Thomas Brown can do is he can help the next guy do it. So, for example, just like Brad Biggs said in that segment, Thomas Brown is a very direct guy. He is no bullshit. He is no nonsense. He is just very direct. And that's what players love about Thomas Brown inside the locker room. You can ask Caleb Williams. You can ask Cole Kmet. You can ask Jalen Johnson. They have all said the same thing about Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown has that Mike Tomlin persona, a guy that's going to be straight up with you and very transparent. And I think this is what the Chicago Bears need, talking about Ryan Poles, George McCaskey, and Kevin Warren. Once again, just like Brad Biggs mentioned, I second that. I hope he does get a former interview and they take it seriously. Does it mean he's going to land the job? Absolutely not. But Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, and even George McCaskey needs to take this opportunity to let Thomas Brown tell him everything about what's going on in the locker room, what he feels like the flaws are of the organization, and just let Thomas Brown be fully transparent. And for Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles and the McCaskey family just to sit back and take that information and use that information to really help them land the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. I can tell you exactly what Thomas Brown's going to say because Cole Kmet said this yesterday in an interview, in the locker room interview. Cole Kmet was very, very straight up and transparent. So as Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson and DJ Moore have also been very transparent about the state of the Chicago Bears. All of them have been saying that this team needs a culture shock. They need a coach that's going to come in and instill that discipline and demand that respect, but also be a man of his words and basically put the players in the best situation to succeed. But at the same time, the players have to do their part as well. But in terms of the culture right now, the Chicago Bears, the culture is totally shocked. And you have to understand that we have dealt with 14-game losing streaks. We have dealt with 10-game losing streaks. That's always a lot for players to take in. Because at the end of the day, losing is contagious, Bears fans. And the Chicago Bears haven't been good for a very long time. And it's because the culture is just all messed up right now. So the Bears need a culture shift. And I think that's what Thomas Brown is going to tell Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and George McCaskey, that the culture is shocked. Players are defeated in there. We just need a whole new culture. And sometimes it's all on the head coach. And now when you get the head coach hire right, the head coach is going to be responsible for bringing in players to fit that mold and to fit that culture. But it starts at the top, right? We Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren and George McCaskey need to hear Thomas Brown out. And this is something that the Bears haven't done before. And it's actually an advantage of when you fire a coach midseason, because you allow the interim head coach to do his business for the last 5 or so games. And then really take that intel from Thomas Brown, a guy that's going to be transparent, professional, and direct with these guys. And hopefully Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles can take that information for Thomas Brown and it can hopefully help them land the perfect head coach. So this is what is interesting about all this. And we've been talking about a whole bunch of different candidates like Ben Johnson, even Joe Brady, Pete Carroll, all those guys, right? Maybe even some people throw in John Gruden at times. Here's what's interesting about all of this. I have a feeling that Thomas Brown's going to go into that interview and say, hey, the Bears need a new culture. They need a head coach that, can come in and demand, earn that respect, right? And get, say, hey, this is how it's going to be. Very direct, very disciplined, transparent. I think that's what the players are looking for, right? So that's why it's not surprising when you hear names like Brian Flores, Mike Vrabel, even Pete Carroll, because all those guys demand respect. All those guys are going to have shift the culture of this organization. And am I sitting here saying that I want the Bears to hire Brian Flores or Pete Carroll or Mike Vrabel? Absolutely not. But when you start hearing what the players are talking about in terms of what they're seeing in the locker room and on the field, on and off, right? That is what they are craving. So whatever coach they decide to hire needs to come in here and just be a true leader and just really shift the culture. And not only that, making sure that your coaches are all aligned as well. So it can't all be on the head coach. And we need a good head coach, OC, DC, offensive line coach. All those coaches have to come in here and be transparent, direct, and just demand that discipline from the locker room, right? So that's why it makes a lot of sense when you're starting to hear those rumors about Brian Flores being high on the Bears list, Pete Carroll being interested, right? Mike Vrabel, because all those guys have the same qualities when it comes to being a probably damn good head coach and what the Bears need currently when you look at the state of this organization. So once again, I just hope that Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, and at this point, I hope the McCaskies, meaning George McCaskey, is actually in that interview as well, because I want him to hear what Thomas Brown has to say, because I guarantee you that Thomas Brown is not going to hold back. He's going to be transparent with them. And at that point, use that information and absolutely nail this next head coach hire for the Chicago Bears. So overall, Bears fans, let me know how you're feeling about all this, what Brad Biggs had to say, and just let me know how you're feeling. I can't wait to hear from you guys. But other than that, Bears fans, make sure you guys continue to hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Geek on the Mic with every single Bears that you know. And once again, Bears fans, make sure you guys head over to betus.com and use promo code YouTube150 for 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000 and get 125% second and third deposits as well. But other than that, be back for our all new Bears podcast right here on Geek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and as always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Geek on the Mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Geek on the Mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Geek on the Mic.